Well, my name is Rick Mirabito. I live actually now in Hepburn Township. I've lived in Williamsport for a long time. I came here in 1989 to work for Judge Malcolm Muir as his law clerk. And after living here, I fell in love with the area and I started a business. And the business that my brother and I started then, we started with our own savings and no federal or state grants. We earned money the old-fashioned way, as Smith Barney said. We reinvested our money in buildings that needed care, and in doing so we rehabilitated a lot of neighborhoods. We brought buildings back on to the taxpayer roll that had been neglected, and we created housing for people. And we've done that for almost 25 years now. A lot of it is in the historic district, and that's an important asset that the community has in terms of an issue that I'll discuss later, which is job creation and tourism. But I've lived in the political district in Lycoming County for many years, and I'm running for the office of County Commissioner. Some of you know me as the state representative, which an office I held for 6 years. And one of the reasons I'm running is because I believe that I have a lot of experience that I gained as state representative that applies to county government. I sat on the local government committee. That's the committee in Harrisburg that writes all the rules and regulations that govern counties. Basically, it passes the legislation that allows county government to do what it does. I sat on the finance committee, which is the committee that deals with all the issues of taxation around the state. How do we raise revenue, both at the state and local levels? And I sat on aging and adult services. Very important committee for our community because so many of our population are seniors, and that population is growing. I also sat on the Commerce Committee, which is the committee that looks into how do we create jobs, how do we bring businesses into Pennsylvania, how do we make an environment that encourages small and large businesses to invest. And my experience on all those committees and my experience as a businessman, I believe gives me a unique window into trying to solve some of the problems and positioning Lycoming County for the next 20 years. When I was a young boy, my mother used to say to me, where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? What she was saying was, Rick, you have to have a plan. And the only way you're going to get somewhere is if you have a plan. And then, of course, you have to work the plan. And that is true of our community also. Where do we want our community to be? Where do we want it to be in terms of economic development? Where do we want it to be in terms of quality of life? And that is another important reason that I'm running. I have a 5-year-old son, and the issue of crime and the issue of quality of life is as important to me as it is to all of you who are watching this, because I know you have children and grandchildren. And quite frankly, at the end of the day, after we put our jobs behind us, that's really the most important thing in our lives. And so I know that as an elected official, I want to use my experience and my skills to try to make this area have the highest quality of life and have a safe environment in which we can raise our kids. Part of that is because we owe it not only to the young ones, but we owe it to the older folks who are in our community. I believe that we each grow when we pass on what came to us and what was given to us as a gift. I was given a gift throughout my whole life. Many of you know my father passed away when I was 2 days old, left my mother with 5 kids, age 8, 6, 4, 2.5, and 2 days. Now, fortunately, she had an education, but she was a woman who was committed to her family, and I had an incredible life growing up. We lived overseas. We didn't have a lot of money, but we learned how to work. We learned how to care and commitment, and those are the kinds of qualities that I believe all of us want to transmit, not just in our families, but in our communities. Because when you do that, you actually build a strong nation. What does County Commissioner do? The County Commissioner is part of both a legislative and an executive branch of government. Legislative in the sense that they pass ordinances, they raise taxes or lower taxes. Last November they raised taxes 21%. But that's the legislative function. As an executive branch of government, they spend the money. They decide which agencies will get money. They decide which entities in the community will will receive money. And they basically set priorities, hopefully based on what the public tells them. They're responsible for public safety, for children and youth, for the court system, for the sheriffs, 911, all of these very, very vital parts of our government. So I believe it's important to have people in office who first and foremost are saying that the public is number one. The taxpayers, the children, the seniors, the public. That's what we as elected officials do. One of the goals that I hope to accomplish is to bring transparency and accountability to our local government. Many of you know one of the first things I did when I was elected in Harrisburg is I passed legislation requiring all state spending to be put on the internet. And I did that because I believe that when 12 million eyes in the state of Pennsylvania are looking at our budget, that we will do a better job of both spending money appropriately and not having money spent inappropriately. And here in Lycoming County, we can do the same thing. We need to create a system where there's more transparency so that, for example, we don't have cost overruns on a building in Hughesville that should have been about $300,000, costing about $1.5 million. That's over $1 million of taxpayer money that just went down the tubes, and people work too hard for their tax dollars to allow us as elected officials to do that. So we need transparency and accountability, and by doing that, we'll also get a better handle on where we need to spend money. I also believe very strongly we have to deal with the problem of crime and drugs in our community. Crime is a business problem. If we see articles in the paper or if we experience a quality of life where people are being killed as a result of drug dealing or other crimes, it hurts our ability to get businesses to invest. It hurts our ability to attract people to the area who may be thinking of taking a job with a local business. So I see the issue of crime and the issue of drugs, because the police will tell you that 90% of the crime is tied up with the drug trade. That is where the crime is emanating from. We need to deal with that problem, and it isn't a problem that we can simply arrest away, and it isn't a problem that we can simply deal with treatment, and it actually is going to affect all facets of our community. As an employer, what I'm learning is that if a family has a member who's involved with drugs, the family member's ability to be as attentive and be at work and do the things that we normally would expect an employee to do gets compromised because they are dealing with a son, a daughter, a mother, a father, even grandparents who may be addicted to starting with prescription drugs and moving to heroin. So we have to be aware that just as a family has responsibilities, we as a community have responsibilities, and we have to find creative ways to make sure that we deal with that problem and deal with it in a way that is actually productive. So in terms of why you should vote for me, I think you should vote for me because first and foremost you're going to be voting for honesty and integrity. When I was in law school, I mentioned earlier that I had worked for Malcolm Muir, the federal judge. When I was in law school, I was a recipient of the St. Thomas More Award, and that was the award given to the person who believed that the law came above all else. And that's the way I intend to conduct myself as an elected official. It's how I've conducted myself when I was in office in Harrisburg, and it's how I intend to conduct myself as your commissioner. I think that by electing me, you're getting a person who has the experience not only in terms of being an attorney and being a businessman and being an elected official, but the life experience of understanding that it's hard for our families to raise children. It's hard for our families to create an environment in which their kids can thrive, and that we should do all we can to prosper and to help that. Not handouts, but helping hands. There's a real difference. Growing up, we didn't have handouts. In fact, ironically enough, my father wasn't covered by Social Security, so we didn't even get the Social Security payments that today will go to families when they lose a parent. But what we did was we got a helping hand through Boy Scouts. we got a helping hand through other organizations. So I'm asking for your vote on November 3rd. You're certainly free to contact me, and I will even give you my cell phone number, 570-777-3588. Call me, tell me what's important to you. I want your voice to be heard, because it's when your voice is heard that we as elected officials do the right thing. And with transparency and accountability, we can continue to keep you as taxpayers number one in our sights. Thank you.